Voidmage Gamer is now partnered with Flipside Gaming, so you can use the promo code on their website, all caps, Voidmage, to get 10% off all orders $10 or more. It's a great way that you can support both Flipside Gaming and Voidmage Gamer's channel. Hello guys, welcome back to another Top 10 Commander video. This time we're going to go over my picks for the 10 most underrated Commander options in the format. Now there's obviously a whole bunch of Commanders you could consider underrated, but just by creativity and just an interest in building around these Commanders, it's actually quite a shock that some of these haven't even been reprinted recently, because they are quite a blast to play with, to actually build a deck around these Commanders. That is really a huge reason why so many people think this format is fun, is the experimenting that you're capable of doing. So many legendary creatures, past and present, and you're going to see a lot of those on this list. Some pretty old ones combined with some pretty new ones. So let's start it off here with number 10, a commander that I think is a pretty tame approach to Golgari, however one that can be just as effective if you want to go with some sort of graveyard theme. Your primary focus is going to be on sacrificing, and that is Sovereign Queen of the Golgari. More about control. Surviving to the late game I think is definitely possible with a commander like this. You gain life off of sacrificing your green creatures, even though what you do with your black creatures is going to get you a ton of removal. You have an incentive to sacrifice both color creatures, and that's kind of how a lot of these old legendary creatures were from the original Ravnica block. They interacted with two different colored creatures, and Sovereign is one of the more interesting for me at least. There's also Momir Vig and Teysa Orzhov Scion, but I feel like Sovereign just doesn't really get that much love, probably because Golgari is pretty stacked when it comes to this kind of strategy. In terms of creativity, it's not going to blow you away, but I think it is very good to actually build around this kind of commander, and it does specify sacrifice, so it's not just about killing creatures, so it at least has some sort of specific thing to build around, whereas most aristocrat decks are just kill creatures with good death triggers. So a big reason why I like Sovereign there. Number 9, we have Empress Galena. Now she's not a dirt cheap commander option, but she has gotten closer to around the $10 mark. She went up ever since they decided to make Planeswalkers legendary permanent types, because she allows you to steal a legendary permanent. It could be anything, it could be a legendary land, and of course the Planeswalkers, but I think she's really a cool option for commander because most of your opponents are going to have a legendary permanent as a commander, whether that's a creature or a Planeswalker, so you have a ton of options when it comes to stealing something. May not be a super complicated strategy, but if you like the whole blatant thievery strategy, blue has a ton of steal abilities and spells. It shouldn't be too difficult to build a deck around utilizing your opponent's creatures. I think she's pretty cool. Number 8 is Citan Krosan Protector. Is the approach in mono green pretty much the same? Yes, but how you do it is different. Now most of the time your mana dorks are just creatures that are going to tap for whatever mana you need. With Citan, the ability is kind of like Azami Lady of Scrolls, where you don't need a haste enabler to take advantage of it because it just says tap an untapped druid, which there are a whole ton of druids, including himself, so it's pretty much going to be green at its best, generating a whole bunch of mana, playing your bigger spells. One of the lesser known mono green commander options I feel like in the format a lot of people don't know about. So if you're used to seeing something like Omnath Locus of Mana or Selvala, anything else that can generate a bunch of mana. If you also like Azami for the ease of her ability, I feel like you'd like him as well. Number 7 is Corona False God, one of my personal favorite commander options just because you can throw in pretty much anything you want into this kind of deck. Colors allow for it, and there are a bunch of different strategies you can go with. Obviously, there are people that make the God Tribal deck. While that's pretty cool, it doesn't always work out, so you could just go for any kind of tribal in 5 colors, and you're going to get a +3/+3 bonus for all of your creatures. I like Group Hug, I like that whole strategy because you are giving her to each one of your opponents, so you're going to at least want to prevent them from wanting to target you out of the game, making yourself look like the least appealing target. And also, she enables commander damage for pretty much anybody who wants that kind of kill, so she can really speed up a game. She's high risk, but high reward as well. You could also go with Chaos for that specific reason. Not always knowing the outcome of every situation, to me that's the best part about Commander, is how different every game can be. And out of a lot of the 5-color commanders, I'm not going to say she's unknown, but she is most certainly underrated compared to other 5 colors like Ramos, the Dragon, Progenitus for Super Friends, 5-color decks. I think it's just the whole risk factor why people have stayed away from Corona. I think she's quite spectacular. Number 6 is Lycia Sanguine Tribune. Now when it comes to life gain decks, it's usually going to be some sort of Orzhov strategy. Very rarely does it incorporate other colors, but you have seen green, you have seen blue. Mardu life gain to me is just so unique and clever because red isn't usually a color you associate with life gain. Life gain is something you do associate with vampires though, and I think that whole flavor from Commander 2017, it was kind of a missed opportunity in my opinion, not having enough around this kind of strategy. But I think cost reduction, rewarding you for gaining life by making your commander cheaper, is a pretty sweet mechanic. And on top of that, she has pretty good keywords. First strike, making herself bigger with +1/+1 counters. And of course, she does have lifelink herself, so you can gain even more life to make up for the life you're paying. While I have struggled in just trying to make a pure Voltron deck, I would rather recommend building around life gain vampires as a whole, even something as simple as a Vampire Nighthawk. If you can make it easier on yourself just gaining life so you can get her out there quicker, you're going to have a better time. Just a very different commander option, and usually the ones that go against the grain are ones I'm going to recommend for most people. Number 5, we have another pretty new commander option that maybe not a lot of people have considered in Charr, Ancestor's Apostle, but I'm going to tell you Charr is incredibly powerful. In Dominaria, you had the whole focus around historic cards, and being able to bring back creatures converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield was a really sweet mechanic that I don't think a lot of people thought was going to be a combo enabler or even something super powerful, because you are in mono white, and usually when you're in mono colors, I guess people assume you don't have that much at your disposal. And mono white hasn't been known for the epic combo decks, but you do have some really cool shenanigans with artifacts and sack outlets. And when you think about some of those win cons like Blasting Station and Aetherflux Reservoir, all you really need are some cheap zero costed things like Ornithopter, Memnite, a decent sack outlet if Blasting Station isn't one of them, and some kind of way to get the creature back from your graveyard using a Treasure Hunter. There's just a ton of creatures that do the same thing, so there's a lot of consistency in that strategy too. But if you don't want to go with combo, I understand. I'm not a big combo player myself. I like janky ones that come out of nowhere. But you could most certainly play Charr in a fairer, more historic centered way, where you're just playing with cool legendary creatures, some good artifacts, taking advantage of her ability while not just winning the game in one turn. And keep in mind, artifacts are mostly what you're going to combo with, so you could just go with historic cards in general, as long as you're able to satisfy the historic qualification. And of course, pair Charr up with some pretty good creatures, and you should be good to go. Number 4 is Vella the Nightclad, another really cool commander option that has been around for a while from the original Plane Chase, and the strategies that you can go with are kind of weird and out there. One that I am very interested in when it comes to Vella is playing Eldrazi's, and specifically the devoid ones from the Battle for Zendikar block, because those are considered colorless creatures, and how Intimidate works is that they can only be blocked by creatures that share a color with them or artifact creatures, so most creatures in general are not going to be able to block your Eldrazi's, so pretty much you just have a commander that makes all of your stuff unblockable, and she also rewards you for when your creatures leave. Each of your opponents are going to lose a life. Aside from that, people have definitely used her as a ninja commander for a while. We do have a much better option to replace her, so if you were looking for a way to take advantage of the creatures leaving, the ninja tribe was a way to go, seeing as all those ninjas just bounce themselves back to your hand anyway with ninjutsu. But I really like taking advantage of the legendary rule. For those of you who are unaware, I go over this every now and then. Using something like Rite of Replication on Vella the Nightclad is going to give you the copies of her, and then they're going to be sacrificed to the legendary rule. It's still going to trigger Vella the Nightclad's ability. Since you have those other copies, they're also going to trigger, and they're going to see each other copy leave too. So you should have something like 30 life lost for each opponent. It could definitely be a game winner. You could also do something similar like this with Blade of Selves, taking advantage of the legendary rule. She's a really sweet commander and one of the very few where I feel like not a lot of people see it coming because of just how underrated she is. In Dimir colors, you're not likely to see her that often as a commander option, but she's definitely one I would recommend. Number 3, we have Lycia the Traitor. Like I mentioned, you want something that goes against the grain a little bit. And in Golgari colors, you expect something like Savra, Queen of the Golgari. You don't necessarily expect artifact synergies. Golgari already had a ton of synergies with the graveyard, but to have those synergies centered around artifacts is really sweet. She's a first strike death touch creature, so she does have a way to make it easier to kill your opponent's creatures. That's usually a pretty tough combination to deal with. And when those creatures die, you get to return artifacts back to your hand, give yourself back that card advantage, replay really cheap artifacts, something that's good for value. Whatever utility artifacts you want to play, those are usually the ones to go with. You could play with equipments, but just think about all of the cool artifact decks that already exist in the format and are pretty dominant. A lot of those cards you can incorporate in a Lycia the Traitor deck. So when it comes to creativity and going outside of what you would expect these colors to do, is a big reason why I think she's underrated. And number 2 is Noren the Wary. Definitely when it comes to underrated colors in the format, red is up there. It does deserve some of its reputation just because we like things such as tutors, we like precision. Red is not precise at all. That's not always a bad thing. You see, Noren is all about doing the unexpected, and some of the most entertaining cards in the format are ones that give you different results. While Noren doesn't do any of that, he is a great enabler for other cards that do. Things like Genesis Chamber and Confusion in the Ranks can get out of hand because it involves everybody's creatures, but if you have a creature that can exile itself and come back on pretty much every turn, you have a way to guarantee that you're getting the most advantage out of your cards compared to every other player. Combined with Noren the Wary, Confusion in the Ranks is just a nightmare to have to deal with. And even if you're going to ignore these super chaotic cards, you do have very strong powerhouse cards like Perforos, Warstorm Surge, getting a creature ETB pretty much every turn. That's going to add up and result in a lot of damage for your opponents. Mono Red can run out of steam pretty quickly and overextend, and that's usually the downfall of the super aggressive deck in Commander. But Noren isn't about being super aggressive, it's about taking advantage of triggered abilities, and it is one of those commanders that can catch people off guard. So definitely underrated, and if you're looking to just have fun in the format, I don't think I can recommend any other commander that's going to give you that type of random experience that Noren the Wary can give you. And then we have number 1, which is the card I feel like is the most underrated commander option, and that is Shatter Gang Brothers. It's everybody's obsession with getting out of the gate strong, trying to get off to the best possible start they can. Sometimes you just want to play control. Sometimes you just want to focus on keeping everybody's permanence in check, making sure nobody gets out of hand. That's what you can accomplish with Shatter Gang Brothers. It's super political, and the synergies can be really cool to play around with. You have those 3 permanent types that you're going to focus on: your creatures, your artifacts, and your enchantments. Considering we have a lot of cards that are considered both types, it should make it pretty easy to successfully keep your opponents in check. We have artifact creatures, we have enchantment creatures, we have artifact enchantments. So your opponents really do have to be careful about putting their combo pieces out there too soon, because it's not unrealistic that you can shut your opponents down with a commander like this. It's very similar to how you would approach something like Grave Pact. Just playing a ton of those cards, making it very hard for your opponents to establish a massive board. That's the whole purpose behind this commander. It's not about the flashy plays, and usually those are pretty underrated cards, the ones that can do the little things. And while I wouldn't consider removal to be a little thing, this kind of removal is. Sacrificing removal, doesn't target, gets around hexproof and shroud, spectacular, and a commander I feel like should see a lot more play. But anyway guys, that's going to do it for this top 10 video. These were my picks for the 10 most underrated commander options in the format. You guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.